everyone, this is Sasha bringing you a video tutorial today from BP4U, and today we're going to look over some of our menus here. So we're going to move from right to left. So here we have our help menu, which you go to find support. You can update your Photoshop here. If you wanted to deactivate your Photoshop, then you could do that here. You can find your registration. There's some legal notices, and if you needed to look up some kind of tutorial or you had a very specific question, you can always go here to the help and support centers. Here we have another shortcut to get to our workspaces. You can arrange your tabs here in different orders and make them look a little bit differently. You can bring up other windows here just by clicking on them. If they have a check mark by them, then they're already open. And you can, of course, switch between your pictures down here, or you can click on the tabs. Here we have our view. We can go to set up some proofing. And so I'm working in CMYK. You can change your workspaces. You can change to RGB or sRGB. Now this is changing your color profile. So I'm going to go back to the working CMYK. You can zoom in. You can zoom out. You can fit this to the screen. You can see the actual pixels or the print size. Let's go ahead and we're going to fit this to the screen. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. You can change your screen mode to full screen or the full screen with the menu bar. So you can see here that we got that. Or we can go completely full screen. And so we have that panel now is completely hidden. And I can just press escape to get out of that. So you can see your extras, or you can have those taken away, and you can show layer edges, a grid, smart guide slices, or a pixel grid. So we have some extra options here. So you can choose which extra options that you want, and I already have all of mine selected, so they're already showing. So we have this 3D menu, and this is stuff here, aside from maybe this right here. Most of this you're not going to have to worry about too much unless you want to change your proof setup. This 3D menu here, you're probably not going to have to worry about for editing photos. That's for 3D projects. We have this analysis menu here. Again, this is something you're probably not going to have to worry about for editing photos. The filter we already covered, so if you haven't watched the filter video, then you can go ahead and do so. Then we have select here. You can do select all, which puts a marquee around your photo, and I'm just going to go Control D. That would be Command D on a Mac. The other thing here that I can select, and the only one that I really ever use from this menu, is the color range. And I can use this to select certain colors from my photos, or my highlights, midtones, or shadows, which is excellent to be able to use. For example, if I wanted to dim the highlights of my photo, then I could select highlights. And I could Control J. Now I've got just my highlights in this new layer. So that was Control J or Command J on a Mac. And now I can work on this layer. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to skip layer for now. And we're going to go over here to image. And so we have an adjustments menu over here. And so this works on the layer that you are currently working on. It will not, over here, if I make an adjustment, it makes a new adjustment layer for me. If I come over here to image adjustments, it does not make a new layer for me. So where this comes in handy is I can work on this layer now without having to do a whole bunch of clipping masks. And so, for example, I could pull the brightness down of just this one layer that I have selected. Let's go ahead and press OK. So here you can see the change that I have made there. And so I brought back some of that detail just to this layer here that I've selected. And so that's kind of cool that you can work on very specific parts of the picture like that. Let's move back over here really quick to layer. Again, here I have another way that I can add a new adjustment layer if I didn't want this adjustments window open, going back to the workspaces. For me personally, I want this open in my workspace, but if you didn't have this open, then you could always go up here to layer, new adjustment layer, and you can make a new adjustment layer here. You can give it a name, and it will come up here as a new adjustment layer. You can also add a new fill layer, and you can do a solid color, a gradient, or a pattern. The only two here that you're really going to have to worry about is solid color and gradient. Most likely you're probably not going to come across too many instances where you're going to need to do a pattern. A solid color, I can go ahead and change that. You can add a color over top of your photo to give it a different effect, and I kind of like this pink because it sort of makes the whole sunset feel a little bit stronger, but I would lower the opacity of that. And so there we have, and I used the soft light blending mode because I wanted, if I would use normal, you can see how it's a little bit murky. Now there's nothing wrong with this blending mode. I like that effect too. But I'm going to go ahead and use the soft light, and for more information on blending modes, you'll have to check out the blending mode video. So here we can duplicate a layer. You can make a new layer. You can make a layer from a group, a layer via copy, which is what we did when we made this right here. We just used the keyboard shortcut Control-J or Command-J on a Mac. You can make a group. You can make a group from layers. You can delete a layer. You can kind of change your layer style, which you can also do by double clicking on a layer. You can change your layer style up here. And so the different things you can do here is you can change your opacity, you can change your blending mode. You can drop shadow, inner shadow, outer glow. A lot of this stuff is really cool for text, but you won't probably find yourself needing to use most of it other than this stuff right here, which you can find right in here on adjustment layers or fill layers. So here you can add a layer mask or a vector mask or a clipping mask, all of which you can also do over here. So back over here, we have a couple more tools. Let me grab my background layer. We have a couple more tools here that we don't have over here. For example, we have a shadows and highlights tool. And here in the shadows and highlights tool, you can control what the shadows and the highlights look like. So you can see here that we can bring up our shadows. You can change the tonal width, and so you can make them give it a little bit more depth, or you can really brighten them up. Again, with the highlights, you can really go in and bring those highlights down, and you can see what wonders it has done for that sky. Again, with the tonal width. So again here, let's go ahead and we can make it look like that. We can go ahead and click OK. And so the disadvantage to doing this is that we worked on our background layer when we did that. So I could always come up here if I didn't like the choice that I made there, and I could go back. And so I can see here, this was my before and this was my after. Now at this point I could go ahead and I could take a snapshot. Maybe I can take a snapshot before and I can take a snapshot after. As you can see, we can only go back so many steps. After, if you were to, for example, run an action, a lot of these steps would disappear because it only stores so many steps. So by taking snapshots, you can go back to the beginning, or you can go back to the snapshots that you have added for more control over your editing, because you don't ever want to get to a point where you want to go back a certain number of steps and then realize that you can't and have to start all over again. So we don't ever want to have to get there. So we can just kind of use our history panel here to take some snapshots along the way. So here we also have auto tone, auto contrast, and auto color. And before I play with that, I'm going to duplicate my background layer. And you can see here, since I've duplicated my background layer, all those other steps disappeared. So you see exactly now what I was talking about. And if I didn't have this to go back to, and this to go back to, there would be no, all of those other steps would be completely gone. So auto tone here, it just gives your picture a tone. You can see very subtle what it thinks that your picture needs to be done, needs done to it. We have auto contrast, and it automatically goes in and selects what it thinks is the perfect contrast for your picture. And then we have auto color, which automatically goes in and tries to correct the white balance of your photo, which I also want to undo. Now sometimes those will be very helpful to you. When I first started learning Photoshop and I first started learning to edit, I found those extremely helpful because I was unsure how to use some of these tools over here. So until you find your groove, that might be an option that works really well for you. So here we have image size. And so in here you can see that we have a really large photo. Now if you wanted to make this picture smaller, you can make sure that your constrained proportions box down here is checked. That's extremely important. And you could go ahead and resize your photo to whatever you wanted it to be. And you can see as I resize my width, everything else starts to resize with it. And that's because I have this constrained proportions box checked. So let's go ahead and we'll make it, we're just going to go ahead and cancel it. And you could also do an auto. I've never done that before. Usually if I'm resizing a photo, it's because I want to resize it to Facebook. If I resize to Facebook, I usually personally make mine a width of 950 on the long side. That is an extremely personal preference. Everybody has their own opinions on what size works best for Facebook, and Facebook as well as other social media platforms, Google+, Twitter, different blog areas. I can't even think. Even sometimes email. If you're just emailing a picture as a proof to a client, everything has its own little scales of what works for it, and it's always, I'm finding it's always changing. And so that is just one of those things that you kind of have to work out for yourself. Sorry, there's a really loud truck going by. That's one of those things that you kind of have to decide for yourself, a very personal preference. Okay, so here in the adjustments menu, we have most of the same tools. Like I said, we have a few other ones. You can automatically desaturate here. Here you can replace a color. And so we can choose a color here. Let's do this. We'll replace, how about this, her dress. We'll replace that with something warm that up a little bit. And you can see that that's not perfect, because you can see that as we're going through here, because her dress has so many different, her dress is very cool, and because it has so many different blues, it's not coming out perfect, but we could do it here again with like maybe the sand. You can choose colors from out here that you would like to replace that with. Let's go ahead and cancel. So let's replace something else. Let's replace, try to replace that. And again, here you can come in and you can work and give the sand maybe a more warm hue. It's working in part with the sky too. You can see the different clouds and stuff. I didn't mean to do that. And so you can see that, and you can maybe pull that down and make that a little bit warmer if you wanted to. Really warm that up. So here you can see our before and our after on that. You could decide if that was something that you liked. We have an HDR effect that we could use. Now this is going to flatten our picture, so let's go ahead and take a snapshot first, because we always want to be able to get back to that point. So here we could play with our HDR. You can go in here and you can really personalize an HDR to fit your specific needs. You can add a lot of detail and really go crazy with it. Everybody has a little bit of a different look for what they want with an HDR. So you could really go in and make the picture kind of crazy here. So that's a very personal preference. Everybody, like I said, has a very specific look that they like with HDR, and that's just something that you have to decide for yourself. Now here's one of my favorite things in this menu, and that is I can flip my canvas. And so I don't find that working so much for this picture, but I have found that to get a composition that is pleasing to my eye, at times I have found myself flipping my canvas over and saying, wow, I like it so much better this way. Maybe I wanted to, I shot it from this way and the picture was over here, but I really wanted it over here, so I flipped my canvas and it just worked. You can also rotate your picture 180 degrees or 90 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise, or you could flip it vertically. We're going to put it back. You can change your canvas size. Now the difference between image size and canvas size is that your image will stay the same, but your canvas will get bigger. I'm going to show you what I mean. So my canvas got bigger, but my image stayed the same. A lot of times I would use this for if I was going to expand my picture, or I was putting together a series of several different pictures and kind of stitching those together. If I was using some cloning or some autofill here to make my picture a little bit larger for different compositions. There's a number of reasons why this could be something that would work for you. So over here, we covered that. So over here we can take a step forward or we can take a step backwards, which is what we've been doing in our history panel. If we had something selected, we could copy, we could paste it, Control C and Control V. Here we can fill something if we have something selected. So let's go ahead and select something. Oh. Let's grab some of these rocks here. Okay, so we could go up here to edit, fill, and then my favorite one here is content aware. And so what it's going to do is it's going to pull in all of the what's around it to, you can see it made the rocks go away. And so we used a content aware fill. If you ever hear this, if you ever hear that expression used somewhere, the content aware fill, that is a content aware fill. So I used my marquee to select it, and I went up to edit, fill, and content aware fill. You can also find it here. If I were to right click, I can also click on fill and content aware, and it will do the same thing. Okay, so here we can do some transformations, which are helpful for text more than anything else. And we'll kind of take a look at those, our free transform and our puppet warp and our text video, because I find it more helpful there. And then here we can open up a new document, or we can open up a picture. New would be a new document, which would be a blank canvas, and open, you can open up a picture. Here you can browse in your bridge, or you can browse in your mini bridge. You can open something as and give it a name. You can open a smart object or open recent. The one here that I use the most is I browse in my bridge and I open pretty much all of my pictures there, open and new. And then of course here we have save and save as. And we have place, which you would use if you were wanting to open a second picture to put over top of this one for a composite. We can import or export, or you can print, or you can exit. So that is our menus, and I hope that you have learned something new from looking over all of these menus. I know it can be a lot of information to take in at once, but I promise it'll be secondhand after you have played with it just a little bit. So thank you so much for watching this video tutorial. Happy editing!